Good morning, good afternoon, and happy Easter. It's been a full day for me today with the beautiful brunch I had with Katie and Jose starting the day. So on Easter, we announce the Lord has risen, and the good news of Easter is so are we. So each Easter service has a special message because we're in different times. Same story, but the world's constantly changing. And I was thinking back to my sermon in 2021, which is just after the pandemic, and the theme was what would you leave behind? And I remember back then that the world felt really disrupted. And at that time we paused and we kind of reflected about the end of the pandemic. And I was one of those people that was convinced that the pandemic was going to be a time when we were going to choose compassion over contempt, and we were going to come together because we all were facing the same thing, and I was sure of it. It was going to happen. But as you know, contempt does not go away quietly. And here we are together in another time of disruption, another Easter time of disruption in 2025. And I would say we're meeting in one of the worst civil crises in my lifetime. I don't think I'm being hyperbolic, it's just that's my experience of it. We face national division, global tension, and personal insecurity. Many of you have talked to me about your own concerns. So in the midst of this Easter, in 2025, we have a new question for you. And my question in 2025 is, what are you rising into? Because the resurrection of Jesus isn't just about what we leave behind. It's stepping into a new life that's waiting just outside the tomb. So in today's gospel story that we had read, thank you, Matthias, it really has a very intimate, it's a very beautiful moment in the resurrection story, and it's a very strange story in some ways too, which I'd like to talk about. So it's early in the morning. The tomb is empty. Mary gets there. And we should point this out, Mary Magdalene, female disciple, she shows up. The men are in hiding. So keep that in mind next time someone says that women can't be pastors. There are the women. She's brave. She's showing up, okay? And she's heartbroken. And she's confused because the body is gone. And she sees a man standing nearby, and she assumes this must be the gardener. And she doesn't recognize it's Jesus. And I've always thought that was very weird. I mean, that's a very strange thing. Why is she staring at this, like her healer, her teacher, the person that she loves the most? She doesn't recognize him. It doesn't really make sense. And our tradition has a really beautiful answer for it. Does make sense to me. And the answer is that Jesus has changed. He's risen, and he's entered into a new spiritual state, and it's a transformational state that's taking place. But then, as he's talking, he says her name, Mary. And in that one word of saying her name, everything shifts. She knows him. And she cries, "Rabbi, teacher." And the story gets a little stranger, because then what would you do? First you see he's gone, now you see he's alive, now you recognize him. So what do you want to do? What would you naturally want to do in that situation? Well, you want to give him a hug. She wants to hold him, cling on to him. And then Jesus says, "Don't cling to me. Don't hold me." That's weird too. Why? Why would he say, "Don't embrace me" after that? And the answer is that the relationship between Jesus and Mary has changed. He's saying, you can't relate to me as you did before. You must come to know me in a new way, spiritually, inwardly, eternally. He isn't rejecting her love, he's expanding it. Throughout his life, Jesus is gradually uniting his human nature with the divine. That process is called glorification. It culminated after the resurrection. So when Jesus says, "Do not touch me," he's telling Mary the relationship has changed. It's no longer about physical closeness, it's about eternal union. But she must grow in order to meet him where he is now. And that's the challenge for all of us, and that's the challenge of this Easter, is that we have to grow constantly, spiritually, all the time. That's the story of the resurrection. It's not just a one-shot deal. It goes on and on through our entire life. It's not just something that happened to Jesus. It happens to us again and again. We have to grow to meet God, to meet Jesus. We have to die to our old selves, and we have to rise to something new. But like Mary, we often try to cling. We try to cling to how God is supposed to show up in our life. We try to cling in our church and our politics to a very fixed image of God that's very familiar. But that's not the way it works. The spiritual life is about constantly growing. I remember as a kid in Sunday school, I was a nerdy, strange kid for Sunday school, and the teacher said, draw a picture of God. I think we were in 4th grade. Katie can relate to this because she works with kids in the arts. And so I drew my picture, and everybody else in the class, the teacher's like, I love it, it's great. And can you picture what all their pictures were? Can you guess what God looked like? It was a man with a beard, and he had gray hair, and he kind of looked like Neptune or something, And everybody had the same God. And then they saw my picture, and my picture was this big blob of an eyeball. And the eyeball had eyes all over it. And they were like, okay, this is weird. Rich, what does this mean? They kind of freaked out. I remember them because, all these pictures of God, and then there's like this eyeball with eyes in it. And so I just said, well, God can see us all at all times and see everything. So God has to have millions of eyes and constantly looking. God must be an eyeball. And that was I think that's a really cool image for a child to have of God. I later found out that when I studied and I saw that on the dollar bill, something Jose knows about, there's an eyeball on the top of the pyramid, the ever-seeing eye. So it wasn't so far-fetched for a 4th grader, but my concept of God for a 4th grader, and all of our concepts of God, whether it was, a man on a thing, those were great for being 4th grade, but they're not who God is. It's how we relate, and we're constantly changing, and we have to constantly evolve and re-understand who God is and evolve with God as we grow. So the resurrection demands that transformation in our life. And that disruption that we're living through right now, I do feel like it is the end of something. We're coming to the end of something. We're blessed to be living in a very unique time in the history of the world. Something big is ending, but I believe that something more beautiful and deeper is also emerging. I know it's hard to believe right now, but we're going to have a tendency to want to cling to the past. We're going to want to cling to what we know. And when we do that clinging, we miss what's ahead of us. And we do this in our personal lives too. Letting go of the familiar, however imperfect it is scary. The past offers certainty. The future requires trust. And clinging can become a coping mechanism. In my coaching practice, I've met many clients who stay at a job or in a relationship that's comfortable but stagnant. And they're afraid to leap into something more aligned with their purpose. And so I've often shared from a book called What Got You Here Won't Get You There, How Successful People Become Even More Successful. And in it, Marshall Goldsmith explains that the very habits that have gotten us to be where we are now are often the things that are holding us back from moving to the next level in our life. And those things were so great for us. Maybe it was something we learned in our childhood that got us through childhood. Whatever it was, they were so great. But if we stick with them, we won't grow to the next level. And so that's the challenge of growing and letting go. He says in the book, growth requires letting go of old behaviors, even the ones that served us well. In another great teaching from a book by an author named Gay Hendricks called The Big Leap, I really like that book. I highly recommend it. And it talks about the fact that we upper limit ourselves. An upper limiting problem in the book is an internal resistance we experience when we exceed the level of happiness or success or love that we're used to. In our subconscious, we have self-imposed limits and our old programming, beliefs from our childhood, beliefs from past trauma, and beliefs from what society tells us. So we can only go this far, and we upper limit ourselves and we stop ourselves from moving because we're in a comfort zone. Even if the comfort zone is painful or small, it's familiar. And when we start to experience more joy, more creativity, or more abundance, our old self-conscious beliefs kick in. And they say, this is too much. Who do you think you are? You shouldn't be paid for this. You shouldn't have an easy life. So we self-sabotage. We cling to the past to stick with what's familiar instead of stepping into our genius. So the book, fundamental teaching of the book is to grow, we have to let go. And Hendrick invites readers to shift into their zone of genius, a space where your deep purpose aligns with your greatest joy. But to do that, we have to release old patterns, old fears, and old limitations. It's a conscious choice to stop clinging and leap to what's next. But change is tough. I remember working, I do a lot of coaching, I do a lot of executive coaching. I remember working not too long ago, but it really sticks in my head, one client, high status, high income, well-known, high reputation, and said, hey, I am feeling this drive to step into my purpose. Like I am gonna live this life, I'm gonna end this life with all this status, but I haven't done what I'm here to do. What I really wanna do is tutor kids and help kids. And I want to create a school, and I want to really help kids particularly who are, less fortunate. And after months of coaching and painstakingly planning and creating business plans, and he was all ready to start this new program, this new life, and the finances were there. He had laid out a financial plan. And then he called me and he said, hey, I want to stop coaching. And when I asked why, he reported that the stress of leaving behind status that he knew was too much. He could not give it up. And the image that he shared with me was like driving a bike up a hill, and it was time to turn around and safely head back down the hill. So all of us at some time have felt that. We've retreated to comfort and clinging. But this is the important thing about clinging. Clinging to the past has a cost. The cost is we never step into our purpose. The cost is we never trust God will lead us through the unknown. And the cost is never living a full life. So today, this Easter, I'm asking you to ask yourself, what are you clinging to? Where do you need to transform to have a new, evolved relationship with yourself, with God? Whatever it is, this Easter is an invitation to let go, to open yourselves, to make a big leap, to stop clinging. You might be afraid of it, you might be denying it, you might be fighting it, but all of us know it's real, and all of us know when it's time. Jesus came back transformed, and he calls us to do the same. Because the way forward won't come through clinging, it comes through trusting. Jesus didn't say, goodbye, Mary. He said, go forward. He moved the relationship from physical to spiritual. And that's how Christ consciousness works in all of our decisions, moment by moment, day by day. And that's the gift of resurrection. So this Easter, we can stop clinging to what we think we're supposed to be and become who we truly are. We can stop clinging to a wound we just can't stop talking about and rise into healing. And this Easter, as a church community, we can rise into something completely new. We have an opportunity to let go of what was in the Church of the Holy City and rise into what's next. We don't need to be afraid, even if it's unclear. In fact, it will be unclear. That's the reason Mary didn't recognize Jesus. It's just never clear. So this Easter, Jesus is calling each of us, he's calling your name, and when you hear it, you will know. So I'll ask you one last time at this Easter, what are you rising into? Amen.
Amen.